Hello, this is Dr. Anthony Delmond. We're now going to have a short lecture on planning, going through the pre-approach and the approach. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to discuss the value of planning, why it's important, how to plan a sales presentation. You should also understand the importance of adaptability. We've mentioned this again and again throughout the course, and we're going to continue to mention it because it's very important for salespeople to be able to adapt in any situation. You can't always predict how the future is going to play out. You should be able to set the groundwork for a successful sales presentation. You should be able to identify appropriate approaches for a given sales situation. You should be able to develop a set of approaches that will work for you selling your product. Planning, like I said, it's an indispensable component of the sales presentation. You really can't expect to be successful in sales if you don't at least have the skeleton built for your presentation ahead of time. That said, just because it's important doesn't mean it has to be really difficult. You might have a very simplistic sales presentation, and that's fine as long as you're getting across all the points you need to. So you don't want to overcomplicate things. That doesn't always make it better. So what do you need to plan? Well, you need to plan a few different things. First of all, you need to plan your 2 pre-presentation stages. You need to work on your pre-approach. This is getting all the documentation set up so that it's clear what you're going to do. This is where you spend time actually mapping out your presentation, getting to know your clients before you're in the presentation itself and on site. And then also the approach itself. This is something you do once you've reached the premises of the sales interview, but you're not yet getting into your formal presentation. We'll talk about the difference as we go through this. The formal presentation is then where you're talking about the product itself and trying to actually make the sale, and you also need to plan out your close, which is where you finalize the details of the sale. Planning can help you reduce your anxiety before, during, and after a sales call, but there's a lot more that planning does for a salesperson. To begin with, you need to have an objective, and your objective as a sales professional should follow this nice little acronym. I don't use a lot of acronyms in my class, but SMART is a pretty common one, and it's useful. Your objective should be specific. It should be very clear what your goal is as a salesperson. If that goal is to sell X amount of product to this client, that's very specific. It should be measurable. Measurable meaning it's easy for you to know whether or not you've been successful. It should be achievable. You do not want to set the goal of selling your entire bulk of inventory to a mom and pop store. That's not really something that you can be successful in. So you want to make sure that it's an achievable goal. You want to make sure that it's relational, as in you're setting up a relationship. So you want to make sure that what you're doing is going to allow you to continue a long-term relationship, and you want to make sure it's timely. In general, you want to achieve one of the following objectives: generating sales. Obviously, it's really important as a salesperson to sell your product. So generating sales is usually a good objective to start out with. Developing the market, so getting your product out there and being able to build out your potential client base. And then protecting the market, making sure that after you develop the market, you're also taking care of it. So another way to look at this is generating sales is where you're getting a product out to target customers. Developing the market is laying the groundwork for finding new businesses, putting out information, educating customers, gaining visibility for your product. So it's really that marketing side. And then protecting the market is learning about your competitors and working on strategies and tactics that allow you to protect the market that you've already developed. In addition to those 3 objectives, you have to consider your effectiveness and efficiency. Effectiveness just means how well you are doing at meeting these objectives. Efficiency has to do with how much you're wasting, how much energy, time, resources you're wasting in doing that. So you want to be both effective, means getting the job done, and you also want to be efficient, which means getting the job with as little waste as possible. If you are highly effective, but it takes you 3 weeks with a single client, and that client would take a normal salesperson only a couple of hours, you might be effective, but you're not efficient. If you were efficient but not effective, maybe you are selling to clients right off the bat. You're able to really do a good job getting the client to decide they're going to purchase the product right away. You're not wasting much time, but you're not selling as much of the product. So it's not very effective in terms of getting your product out there and developing that market. So you definitely need to balance effectiveness and efficiency. Good salespeople are going to prepare for any possible scenario. You want to be able to anticipate how your prospective customer is going to react. If you really spend some time getting to know your customers in advance, reading through your notes, going back over the documents you created when you were prospecting, you should be able to figure out what they're going to ask so that you can prepare answers and solutions to meet them right away. If you prepare as a salesperson, you're going to have a lot more self-confidence. You're going to exude professionalism. People are going to think this is a very intelligent person. They're an expert in their field. I trust them. And your confidence is going to give your customers and your prospect confidence in purchasing from you. If you're more prepared, you're going to make fewer errors, and errors definitely turn a customer off. If you don't know something about your product, you're going to frighten your customer away. So you want to make sure that you don't make any errors, you speak very clearly, and you seem rehearsed and prepared. Not stale, but prepared. There are a few things that increase the importance of your planning, and those are when the customer's decision-making process is extensive. We talked about extensive routine and limited decision-making. When a customer is going to have to go through a lot of personal thought and consideration to make a purchase, because there's maybe a lot of risk, maybe the product's very expensive, and the risk of making a bad decision is very high. It's important that you plan very well. It's important that you have a bunch of contingencies in mind, because you want to be able to answer all their questions and make it very clear to them that you care and that you're putting energy into this with them. When you think that there are going to be future interactions or negotiations with the customer, it's a very good idea to plan in advance so you are prepared for that as well. When the customer has very unique needs, if you are meeting with a customer and this customer is just like every other customer, you don't have to spend as much time planning because you've already planned for similar customers. If you have somebody that has a very specific issue or maybe a niche market that they're serving, if you're talking about a retailer, it's a really good idea to know that area and spend a lot of time thinking about it that you wouldn't have to do for one that wasn't in that scenario. If the customer has a large range of alternatives to choose from, so if you're in a market maybe that has a lot of competitors, you're going to have to spend a lot of time thinking about what you can do to make sure they know your product is the best for them. And if the sale is critical to you as the salesperson, for example, a key account, or if you're trying to meet your sales goals, then obviously planning is more important to you. We'll stop there and come back and talk about the pre-approach.